All right, so have you ever noticed how Americans can be kind of like uh, well loud?
Oh, yeah.
You know, like if you're getting ready for a trip over to the States, or maybe you're going to be working with some American colleagues, or
Mhm.
even if you're just kind of curious about this whole stereotype thing.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to like really dig into that
Mhm.
and figure out like, why is that a thing?
That's a great question.
Yeah, and we're not just going to like acknowledge it. We're
Right.
going to like uncover the why behind
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, we have this video script that we're diving into.
Okay.
It's called Why Are Americans So Loud?
Okay.
And it actually lays out all these potential reasons
Oh,
from like history and culture,
okay.
even to the size of the country.
Huh.
It's not just like a random quirk, you know,
Right.
there's actually like a lot of depth to unpack here.
So it's not just like a personality thing.
Right.
This is like deep.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Okay. So the script starts off by
Yeah.
connecting this whole loudness thing to American individualism.
Yeah.
Like the idea that standing out is a good thing.
Right. And it
Yeah.
goes even deeper than just like being heard, you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the script really argues that in American culture, speaking up is often tied to success.
Right.
Think about the classic American dream narrative, like settlers, revolutionaries,
Mm-hmm.
pioneers.
Yeah.
They had to be bold and vocal.
Oh, yeah, to survive.
Exactly, to thrive in a new, often really harsh environment.
Oh, totally.
It's almost like volume became like this tool for survival.
Wow, yeah.
And maybe that's kind of echoed down through the generations.
Oh, that's a really interesting way to think about it. So, like, those historical echoes are still, like,
Yeah.
shaping how Americans communicate today.
Right. It's like ingrained in the culture.
Yeah. Have you ever, like, been in a meeting or, like, a really crowded room
Oh, yeah.
where you feel like you had to, like, really speak up to even be taken seriously?
Right.
Right.
Maybe that's like a little subtle hint of that
Yeah.
American drives to be heard. I think you're right.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, too, because the script even suggests
Yeah.
that this is, like, just one piece of the puzzle.
It's just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, really?
It brings up something I thought was really surprising, actually.
Oh, what's that?
The sheer size of the U.S. might actually play a role.
Okay, now this is where I got interested.
Right.
Because the script uses these amazing visuals, like
Oh, yeah.
the Grand Canyon, these endless highways.
It's so vast.
Right. It really drives home just how massive the U.S. is.
Exactly.
But how does that connect to volume?
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
In wide open spaces,
Okay.
you naturally project your voice more to be heard across those distances.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense.
So over time, maybe that need to communicate over those vast landscapes
Yeah.
became ingrained in the culture,
Oh, wow.
even in cities.
So it's like the landscape itself shaped how people communicate.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It really is. And the U.S. is also incredibly diverse, right?
Oh, absolutely.
With all those different accents and dialects,
So many.
could volume also be a way to, like, ensure clarity across those differences?
I think so. Yeah, the script actually highlights that point.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, suggesting that speaking up might be a way to overcome those linguistic barriers
Right.
and make sure everyone understands no matter where they're from.
Yeah.
It's like a practical solution that evolved into a cultural norm.
It's like the U.S. is this giant social experiment in communication,
I like that.
and volume is one of the key variables.
Oh, wait.
But the script doesn't stop there.
Oh, no.
It contrasts the bustling streets of New York City
Yeah.
with these quieter scenes like a European cafe.
Right.
Clearly not every American lives in those wide open spaces.
That's true.
So what's going on there?
Well, that's where we move from geography to cultural norms.
Okay.
The video points out that different cultures have different volume expectations for public spaces.
Oh, that's interesting.
What's considered normal in one place might be seen as disruptive or even rude somewhere else.
It's like those unspoken rules of like social interaction, right?
Exactly.
The script specifically mentions how in the U.S., silence in a social setting can be interpreted as disinterest or even rudeness.
Right.
It's almost like you're expected to contribute to the soundscape.
Yeah, you got to be part of it, you know?
Right, like you can't just be quiet.
Exactly.
You got to be like present.
You got to make some noise,
Yeah.
show you're there.
Right, and that's so interesting because the script contrasts that
Uh-huh.
with cultures where quietude is valued,
Right.
like as a sign of respect or attentiveness.
Totally.
And in the U.S., it's often the opposite.
Yeah.
Being vocal is associated with engagement, like showing you're present
Right.
and part of the conversation.
It's like a whole different way of looking at it.
It is, and it makes you think about, like,
Yeah.
how easy it is to misinterpret someone's intentions based on these cultural differences.
Oh, absolutely.
But hold on, we got to talk about the entertainment industry.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because that adds another layer to all of this.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't ignore the global influence of Hollywood and American media.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Right. The script argues that these often portray loud, expressive behavior as not only normal, but like desirable.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. Reality TV talk shows, even the news, it's all very high energy and well loud.
Yeah, it's true. I definitely notice that.
Yeah.
And it's not just Americans watching this stuff.
That's the thing.
It's global.
It's everywhere.
Right. It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
does this constant exposure to loud, larger-than-life personalities affect how people around the world perceive acceptable volume?
Right. Like, what's normal?
Yeah. Is it shifting?
That's a good question.
Yeah, and it's not always about, like,
Yeah.
being assertive or anything like that.
Right.
The script also highlights, like, a more positive side.
Oh, yeah.
How Americans often express joy and enthusiasm very loudly.
They do it big.
Right. Like cheering at sports games, singing happy birthday with such gusto.
Oh, yeah. They go all over.
It's like they're not holding back, letting those positive emotions out in a big way.
It's contagious, isn't it?
It really is. You can't help but get swept up in that energy.
Right. Even if you're not usually the loudest person in the room.
Exactly. And do you think this connects back to that?
What do you think?
Like American dream idea we talked about earlier.
Oh, well, maybe.
Like maybe this outward expression of joy is seen as part of achieving success or happiness.
It's possible, you know, in a culture that values ambition and achievement, being loud and enthusiastic could be seen as another way to pursue those dreams with gusto.
Yeah.
Like the volume becomes a symbol of that drive.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about history, culture, geography.
It's complex.
Right. It's clear there are a lot of factors
So many.
that might contribute to this perception of Americans being loud.
Absolutely.
But let's shift gears for a moment and think about those times when Americans travel abroad. Okay, the script highlights how these contrasting cultural expectations for public spaces can really magnify those volume differences.
Oh, for sure. It's important to remember that what's considered loud is relative.
Oh, yeah.
What's perfectly acceptable in one culture might be seen as intrusive or even disrespectful in another.
Right.
So if you're planning a trip and you encounter some Americans,
Yeah.
their volume might not be intentional rudeness.
Okay.
It could simply be a reflection of those ingrained cultural norms we've been talking about.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that even something as simple as volume can be a source of cultural misunderstanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it makes you think what stands out to you as our listener.
Yeah. Have you ever noticed this American loudness firsthand?
Whether you're traveling or interacting with American colleagues or friends,
What was your experience?
did you find it jarring or did you kind of get caught up in the energy?
Yeah, what do you think?
It's so interesting to think about, right?
It is.
And it's important to remember this is a generalization. Oh, of course.
Not every American fits this loud stereotype.
Just like in any culture,
Right.
there's a spectrum of communication styles.
Exactly. But even with that in mind,
Yeah.
it's clear that there are some really intriguing cultural factors that contribute to this perception.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating, right?
It is.
We're going beyond surface level observations.
Peeling back the layers.
Yeah, and really trying to understand the why.
Get into the heart of it.
Exactly. And maybe we're even recognizing a bit of ourselves in these cultural differences.
It's possible.
Right, because after all, we all have our own unique ways of expressing ourselves.
That's true.
And sometimes those expressions might come across a bit louder than others.
That's a good point.
So as we kind of wrap up this first part,
Yeah.
what would you say are like the key takeaways for our listener today?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that loudness is subjective
Okay.
and often rooted in those cultural norms.
What might seem excessive in one context could be perfectly natural in another.
It's like a reminder to chip our assumptions at the door, right?
Exactly.
Instead of jumping to judgments, maybe we can approach those cross-cultural interactions with a bit more curiosity and understanding.
I think that's key.
Yeah, and I like what you said earlier about how
Yeah,
maybe this deep dive has even sparked a bit of self-reflection for our listener,
I hope so.
right? Like, how do you express yourself?
As a listener, yeah.
Are you naturally more reserved or are you more expressive?
Right, and how do those communication styles change depending on who you're with or where you are?
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah.
It's like communication is a two-way street.
It is.
It's not just about how we project ourselves, but also how we perceive and interpret the communication styles of those around us.
We're all sending and receiving these signals all the time.
Exactly. And like you said,
Yeah.
it's about cultivating that awareness and being open to different ways of interacting.
Absolutely.
And maybe by understanding those differences, we can bridge those cultural gaps.
I think so.
And foster a greater sense of connection and empathy.
That's the goal.
I love it. Okay, so as you go about your day-to-day, listener, pay attention to the volume levels around you.
Notice how people express themselves, both verbally and non-verbally.
What feels natural? What feels out of place?
And if you do encounter someone who seems a bit loud, maybe you'll approach that interaction with a newfound sense of curiosity rather than judgment.
Right.
Who knows, you might even learn something new about their culture.
Yeah.
And maybe even about yourself.
What a great way to kind of like wrap up this first part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
So until next time, fellow deep divers, keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
And keep embracing the beauty of human connection in all its diverse forms.
I love that.
All right, we'll see you next time.
See ya.